Eli Whitney is best remembered for his invention of the cotton gin. He also introduced the concept of interchangeable parts, which basically means if something breaks on a machine, you can just replace that one broken part, versus the previous method of replacing the entire machine if just one part broke. He made that concept more widespread and helped spark the beginning of the American system of manufacturing. Eli wasn't the first person to try to create this cotton gin. He was inspired by similar inventions such as the saw gin and roller gin. His exceptional skills in mechanical engineering came from his childhood days of working in his father's shop. At a young age, he would tinker with his father's watch and make instruments. Eli attended Yale University for mechanical engineering. He went on to create and fix a number of things, like nails and stuff on campus and working for a carpenter. After he graduated Yale, Eli went to Georgia to become a teacher. When he got there, they said, actually, we gave that job to somebody else. So Eli stumbled to the Greens estate to tutor their kids. The Greens worked in the embroidery business, and one day, Mrs. Green was complaining about how she wished the construction of the embroidery machine was better. So Eli said, I'll fix that for you, and improved the mechanics of the machine. Mrs. Green was very impressed by Eli's work and got the word out about him to her community. This news about Eli's genius got the attention of some revolutionary men who were complaining about the green cotton needing a better way to separate the seeds from the cotton. Mrs. Green encouraged them to ask Eli for his services, and thus the idea for the cotton gin was born. Eli's intention for this invention was to try to hasten the end of the Southern slavery by reducing labor work. His original goal was to eliminate the need for slaves by replacing labor with machines. He thought, if I can help them make cotton fiber production easier, maybe they won't need as many slaves. He was very wrong. Even though Eli Whitney's intention for the cotton gin was to help abolition and end the need for slaveries, to use more labor, slave owners took advantage of this invention and ended up industrializing slavery, leading to the intertwining of slavery and capitalism.
One of Eli's big influence in creating the cotton gin machine would be Mrs. Kuntz. In 1792, Eli came to Georgia after graduating from Yale, hoping to pursue his study. That's how he met with Catherine Kuntz, who offered him a place to live while he worked on his invention machine. She was employed in embroidery, which at the moment worked with tempera frame, while Eli was her kid tutor at home. One day, she complained to him about the terrible construction of the tempera frame, so he developed a better version of it for her. Since then, she saw the potential that Eli had in designing machine. Then came one night when she and her family went out and had a talk with a group of officers from the Revolution. The conversation they were having was about agriculture. Mrs. Green brought up the problem that they don't have machine to clean the seed from the green seed cotton. And the process of cleaning the seed by hand is a crucial job for a woman. Picking 1 pound of cotton might take them the whole day. Then she introducing Eli Whitney to the group of officers, telling them about all of his invention, the machine that he had worked on. That night, Eli Whitney started one of his famous inventions, building the cotton gin machine. Catherine was also one of the people that helped spread the word about cotton gin machine when it was done. Soon, the machine was widespread across the southern state. Beside her influence toward Eli, her financial support is also a big factor in Eli's success. In the end, the machine was ratified on May 19, 1793, under the firm of Mahler and Whitney's.
A simple yet complex machine that separates the seeds of cotton and other foreign components from cotton with a wheel, a belt, and some wire. The machine pulled cotton through a set of wire-like teeth mounted on a spinning wheel. The fiber would pass through narrow openings on an iron breastplate that was just large enough to allow the cotton fibers to pass through it, but small enough to prevent the seeds from passing through. This, in turn, separated the cotton seeds from the cotton. This unique invention created by Mr. Eli Whitley is what we know as the cotton gin, the short staple type. The cotton gin was initially created to lessen the workload of slaves tremendously. The machine sped up the amount of cotton that was able to be prepared by separating the seeds from the cotton a lot faster than picking the seeds from the cotton by hand. This process took long hours to do and was highly ineffective, as lots of cotton was lost or wasted in the process of handling and hand-picking the seeds. Add this to the process of the amount of time the slaves spent in picking the cotton by hand and then having to spend extra time picking the seeds from the cotton. This created a system of extreme labor. Not that the slave masters cared, though. The cotton gin was able to produce about 50 pounds of separated cotton fibers a day. Considering this was a business, a bad one at that, might I add, it was better to have the cotton gin do the separating of cotton fibers from the seeds. This should have driven the need for less slaves, since you only needed slaves to pick the cotton. Seeing as in how slaves picked about 200 pounds of cotton a day, which they were checked each day by a slave master or overseer, if we do the math, we can see how more slaves would have driven the need for more cotton gin machines on the plantation, and thus that can cause overproduction, one would think. Now, as a slave, you would think that the news of a new device coming into town by the slave master would mean you got to take a small break in the day, right? I mean, you can only dream because you are a slave. Well, the invention of the cotton gin had an opposite effect on the workload of slaves. The cotton gin was so profitable for slave masters that it increased the need and demand for land and the need for slaves. The slave masters wanted the land to grow more cotton on, as it was relatively easy to grow cotton in the South. With more land and cotton grown, slave masters needed more slaves to pick the cotton and to continue the profits made from the increase in demand for cotton. So as much as the slaves thought that freedom might be close, they were left with all but an even more bitter taste of more defeat with the creation of the cotton gin. Way to go, Eli. This created the second largest forced migration in the history of America, due to the slaves in the Upper South being in high demand and sold off at a higher frequency. Being sold more frequently didn't sit all too well with the slaves, as it was an added layer of frustration to the slaves desiring to be free even more. And it is not likely and not like they wanted to stay enslaved before the creation of the cotton gin. I mean, they literally picked cotton for free. All except for one slave by the name of George Grainer Sr., while at Plantation Monticello, who made half the wages of an overseer at a plantation. Talk about special treatment. But an interesting fact, though, slavery was actually on the decline before the cotton gin was ever invented, as profitability for tobacco, rice, and cotton was declining. In short, if Eli did not create the cotton gin, slavery would have probably been abolished sooner, as this was the case of slavery being abolished in the North. It became largely unprofitable to own slaves due to the decline in the demand for products that slaves worked to produce.
Now I will discuss the economic ramifications of the cotton gin. The creation of the cotton gin ramped up the production of cotton, with the ability to produce cotton faster and more efficiently. Therefore, the need for labor increased with the growing output of cotton. As production of cotton boomed, the industrialization of slavery began. Whitney's device drove explosive growth in the U.S. economy's exports. In 1796, America shipped 6 million pounds to Europe. That was up from 190,000 pounds just 2 years earlier. By 1800, the U.S. produced 35 million pounds of cotton. This massive economic boom can be attributed to the free labor force on the southern plantations. In the 1800s, the slave population reached around 4 million slaves. The plantation economy became a driving force in the rapid economic changes taking place. The intertwining of plantation economics and industrialization led to the capitalistic movements in America and the global economies. Whitney's invention of the cotton gin changed the southern agrarian economy to an industrialized powerhouse that transformed the production of cash crops. As you can see, this did not help abolition. The cotton gin industrialized the cotton industry and increased slavery. Industrialization and slavery go hand in hand in the capitalist society developed in America and the Western world. However, there is one aspect into which it did help abolition: literature. The atrocities of slavery were highlighted, and therefore it led to abolition literature based on religion. Trevor Bernard, a credible historian, said, "Abolitionism came entirely out of the debates of the nature of capitalism and after the Industrial Revolution." Enormous literature on abolition that stresses the religious motivations held by anti-slavery proponents. So to sum it all up, Eli Whitney's intention of the cotton gin was to help abolition and end the need for slaves in the production of cotton. However, slave owners took advantage of this and ended up industrializing slavery and led to the intertwining of slavery and capitalism.